And your phone is off, right?
And you're listening to 90.1 FM KKFI Kansas City Community Radio. This is Changing Narratives with Brother Jay and Brother Brown and a very, very special guest in studio. I want to welcome everyone to another program here in Kansas City. It is AFC Championship weekend, of course. I got to send a huge shout out to our Chiefs. Wish them well on the game tomorrow. And like I said, we have a very, very special guest, so I'm not going to spend too much time introing, but I do want to thank everyone who is listening on 90.1 FM in Kansas City. And if you are listening to us on kkfi.org, wherever you are at, hope you are having a wonderful, wonderful weekend. We are having a heat wave here. It's in the 30s, so we're excited to see some of this snow melt. And so, like I said, want to thank everyone for tuning in to another program. And so, without any further ado, want to introduce our guest, Dr. LaTonya Stephens. Want to give her a proper introduction, so please bear with me. Dr. LaTonya Stephens is a dynamic force for change and inspiration. An author, licensed marriage and family therapist, global missionary, humanitarian, and life coach. She has dedicated her life to empowering individuals, families, and communities. Along with many other degrees, she holds a Doctor of Philosophy in International Psychology and a passion for addressing systemic challenges. Dr. Stephens combines her expertise in marital health, youth development, and sustainable global initiatives. And from her literary achievements to her impactful work in Zambia and beyond, Dr. Stephens embodies the spirit of transformation and resilience. And we want to welcome her to our program, Dr. Stephens. So thankful to have you here today.
It is so great to be here. Hey, everybody that's in the radio audience.
Yes, thank you so much. And so I always like to introduce our guests to our audience, tell a little bit about your background, and then we will jump into your passions. But, most of our guests have been from Kansas City, so tell us about where you started and what led you here to Kansas City.
My name is LaTonya Stephens, and I come from the town of, or city, Detroit City, from the east side.
All right.
Yes.
Okay, D-Town in the house.
Yes.
And so, like I said, I mean, you have quite a few academic achievements, and so starting off at Detroit Mercy. Mm-hmm. And so tell us about, you can kind of give us the condensed version of what led you here to Kansas City.
Yes, so from here, I moved to Georgia, and that's where I met my husband.
Okay.
Well, before we got married. We had similar backgrounds, worked with youth. I ended up going to school at Pepperdine University in California, and that's where he lived.
Okay.
And it just so happened that he asked me to go on a date and asked if we can continue dating since I was in the same town as him. Mm-hmm. So as a result, we ended up getting married. Fast forwarded. He ended up getting into pastor. He was a youth pastor. Ended up becoming a pastor here in Kansas City. So that's what brought us to Kansas City from California.
Okay, that is awesome. And so, as you started your missionary work, and we're going to spend the majority of time talking about the work that you're doing, your missionary work. But I want to, because we do talk so much about education, do want to spend a little bit of time telling us, talking about your educational journey. Like I said, I would be here for a half hour or so listing off all of the degrees that you have. But talk to us about how that was instilled in you. Was that something that your parents, you just knew coming up you were going to go to college? Or, when did you get that bug, to further your education?
I think my mom was just, I watched her try to get a degree. She wasn't able to get her degree, but she made attempts, and she would take classes, very smart. I didn't know anything about college per se. So by the time I went to college, actually it was a school that called me and offered me some scholarship money. And that's how I ended up at University of Detroit. Because I didn't know where I was going to go to school. I was pretty ignorant to that. Mm-hmm. My mother took me to the South where she was born. and I saw the conditions of where they used to live, the former plantations, and I saw a rock with her maiden name on it, and it shook me to my core. And I made in my mind at that moment that I was going to get my doctoral degree, and so that was part of the academic push. One of the things she did not want for her children was to be ignorant,
Right.
and she wanted us to be able to excel in life. And so she took us to places. I think she was just led to do some of these things. She took me down there, and I was just like, I'm not living like this. I don't want to live like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then I heard the story of my grandfather, who had only a third grade education. And after hearing his story, it was just a push to not settle and to not to go in that same direction.
Mm-hmm. That is awesome. And so, once you get into school, like my daughter, she's a senior this year at Jackson State. And, she's starting to get anxious and, trying to figure out her future. So then once you finished up, you got your bachelor's degree, what led you to say, you know what, I want to continue on this journey and further my education? Because a lot of folks are like, I'm done. I'm trying to get to the money. Right.
Yeah,
So talk to us about that for you.
For me, after finishing my bachelor's, and I started a nonprofit organization actually, and that's the Generation Prodigy, and I was program working with youth. As I was into it and starting to acquire students, it was a part of me that knew I needed some more education, especially when it comes to having credentials from a mental health perspective. Mm-hmm. And so that's what really prompted me to go back and get my master's. Being in the middle of that nonprofit organization and doing all of my research, I had a binder thick of information.
Right.
But I was like, I think I'm going to need some more education here. Prayed about it, and that was the direction. The direction for me.
Wow, that is awesome. And so, sounds like from a young age, service, doing for others has been something that's been instilled in you as well.
Yes.
And so as you transitioned, it sounds like you've had several organizations, but then what led you to Africa, to home? Talk to us about that.
So in my undergrad years, the school they ended up calling me that I never applied for, that was actually the school where I started doing mission-based work. Okay. I always had a sensitivity for the homeless and would go to dinner with them. It was, I just felt they're human too, just hearing their story. I love stories. Mm-hmm. And so when I was at the University of Detroit, they had a summer program or a spring break program where you can go and do outreach programs. So with the Jesuit community and the nuns, and we would take the homeless into the convent and help them out, build furniture. From there, after leaving after my bachelor's degree, when I moved to Georgia in the year 2000, I'm about to date myself. The pastor there would travel to Africa and ask for me to join the team.
Wow.
And so that was the beginning of my first trip to Africa, was to Nigeria. I was baptized by fire.
Okay. So that is awesome. That's, a dream of mine, whether it be Ghana or, Johannesburg.
They're all beautiful.
So yeah, to get to the continent. So you first went in 2000.
Yes.
Okay.
To Nigeria. Lagos, Nigeria.
Okay.
Yes. Some people would say, oh, she did crazy, she would go to Nigeria.
And so for someone like me who is completely ignorant, talk to us about that. So what does that mean? You trial by fire in Nigeria.
Because Nigeria is New York on steroids.
Oh, okay.
So the traffic was very heavy. At that time, they didn't have traffic lights. And so we're trying to, get through the road, and everybody is on top of each other. Somebody's getting out of the car trying to navigate traffic. You're going to be late to everywhere you go. It was chaos, and it was a lot of people. To see a sea of Africans, it was amazing. I was getting energized because I do like New York, but it was like it was a lot.
Right. So
very stimulating.
So for you in your first visit, did you feel like maybe you needed to be deprogrammed? Were there any stereotypes that you had going into it?
It felt natural.
That is awesome.
My best friend, she was Nigerian.
Okay.
So we met in school, and so I was already accustomed to eating the food. I was accustomed to the jollof rice and the greens and the okra soup that was spicy and almost felt like my nipples was going to fall off. So I think that was a kind of prepping ground because it was an international school too.
Right.
And so I had my other roommate, she was from Cameroon.
Mm.
And so it was quite fun and hearing all the accents, so that's how I kind of started getting into the accent.
Right.
So going there, it felt like home, and as soon as I hit the ground, tears could have just fell down my face because it felt like home.
That is awesome, and that's what I imagine it would feel like for me.
Yeah.
And so, my partner here, Brother Brown, has been to the continent several times, and want to work him into the conversation, to talk about his experiences in Africa as well.
Yes.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Again, for myself, the first time I went there, it was Storytellers Incorporated. So we took a group of students over there for an art project, and
Nice.
and so we went to Senegal and Burkina Faso as our two main locations. And again, I was just having this conversation with a friend of mine who's really nervous and takes in everything that you see in multimedia. Now it's a different culture, but when you come to the people, they're just still everyday people like we
Yes.
are.
Yeah.
And again, biggest differences is the paradox
Yeah.
between the haves and the have-nots. That have-not is a little bit different.
Uh-huh.
I mean, again, you're poor here, you could still be living with air conditioning in the project.
That part.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
So it's levels to everything. But again, I think the biggest piece and what we were striving to do is to take off the mask for our young people and to let them know that this is something doable. And I think that's the biggest piece that people need to take away from, and just to make those connections, because just as we're interested in serving, there's people that are interested in serving and on the continent, serving their own people. Again, and that was the position that I was in, was not to come in like some savior, but how can I help the people that are already doing the work here and apply them with the resources so that they can continue doing their good work.
Right.
I don't know if y'all heard of Bishop Blake, so this was an amazing thing he said. He said what Joseph was for his brothers is who the African Americans are for Africa, which was really powerful because coming there, I had acquired friends, and they said, we need more of our brothers to come back home. We need more of our sisters to come back home, because when they see us coming, well, I speak from my experience, some of the places I went to, it was an automatic encouragement. I had a young lady to say, the fact that you slept in my bed and I see you and see what you've done, she says, I'm going to be boss one day. And she is right now.
Right, and that is so awesome. And I think also for black folks in America to understand, because so often all we hear is, Africans don't like y'all, they think you're lazy and they think you're this. And while absolutely, don't get me wrong, I do believe that there's some truth in that. But we can't just end the conversation there.
Right.
And so that's the thing where when we're talking about our homeland and that sort of connection, I just think that we have to have these kind of conversations. And so you mentioned, Brown, resources. And so want to talk about the work that you're doing, and, want to spend some time in making sure that we're giving out the information where folks can find out how they can donate and make contributions, because I think the work that you are doing is so important. But we are actually getting close to our first break. So before we go to break, just kind of tell folks where they can go to find out information on the work that you're doing and what you have coming up.
Well, you can visit us on Instagram. You will see a slew of information on Instagram and Facebook. Go to Zambia International Mission. If you put that information in, again, that's Zambia International Mission, you'll be able to go straight to our page where you can see loads of videos and footage and photos of some of the work we've done, and our website, ZambiaInternationalMission.org.
Oh,
Yes.
the website, I thought
Yes.
you said Facebook.
Yes, it's on Facebook
It's on
too.
Facebook as well.
Facebook, Instagram, and our website.
Yes, but it's Zambia
InternationalMission.org.
.org. Yes. So want to make sure, encourage, and give that information out a couple of times throughout the program. But we are up against our first break, so if you are just tuning in, you're listening to 90.1 FM KKFI Kansas City Community Radio. This is Changing Narratives with Brother Jay and Brother Brown and our guest, Dr. LaTonya Stephens, and we'll be back after this quick break.
America. Their community minute for January spotlights Happy Hearts
A
Working,
little loud.
whose mission is to provide
So we have-
enriching
this will
Christian
be about 40
programs for
seconds
adults
of break
with
time.
intellectual and developmental disabilities.
So, and this
Happy
is
Hearts Working is
not for
committed
profit,
to implementing
right?
job connections along with
Yes,
volunteer
and not
and
for profit.
skill building
Yeah, so
opportunities
just
for
to
their
make sure
associates
people
to
know
lead a
it's
purposeful,
not for
joyful
profit.
life. shared
Okay.
with others.
Deductible
Learn
and all
more
that.
about
Oh, yes,
Happy
ma'am.
Hearts
Thank
Working
you.
all this month at Community Lending of America's site, CLAKC.com.
Trump, his appointees and supporters are working to
Okay.
deny non-commercial
So
broadcast
when we come back,
licenses
we'll
and
start back
501c3
off with
status to
what you
broadcasters
have
and
coming up,
nonprofits.
when
The
you're
big
going
divide
back,
in politics
and
in
the
US
types
is
of
not
things that
between
you're looking
conservative
for as
and
far as
liberal. It is
donations,
between
what
the people who
you're
control
trying
most
to
of the money
provide.
for the media
Then
on
we
one
can jump
side,
into
and the bottom
the
99% on the
schools
other.
that
Join
you
the
built and
Protect
that type
Free
of work.
Speech hybrid event January 25, Saturday, 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern,
I was
4 to
excited
6
to do that.
p.m.
Good too.
Pacific by going to peaceworkskc.org and look for Defend Free Speech Town Hall.
This message, a public service of KKFI.
90.1 FM, KKFI, Kansas City Community Radio. This is Changing Narratives with Brother Jay. And we are having a conversation with our guest, Dr. LaTonya Stephens, about the work that she is doing in Zambia. But you've been in other places on the continent as well.
Yes.
But kind of talk to us about that specific work and what you have coming up here in the short term.
Yeah, so Zambia is, I call it my baby, it's near to my heart right now. That's the main country, my hub for doing missions work. And this started with income generation, sustainability model. Actually, we were trying to pilot. And we started off in Zambia when I was working with Save Africa's Children. And at that time, we had to come up with a way, and I was looking for ways to where there'd be sustainable projects, because just to go and bring money and then it's gone. So we was trying to find something that was more sustainable. So we started with Bishop Godway, who's the pastor I work with there. His wife's name is Valen, and she started a school. She's a teacher by trade. And so she was educating her own children, and then the neighborhood, the village children, they wanted to be educated too. So the parents was asking if she could teach their children. So she started school. They're now in 2 locations called Firm Foundation Christian Academy.
Wow.
Yes, so we're trying to get money for textbooks. We are looking to try to support the teachers because the laws has changed and the increase for teacher salaries has changed. But to be able to get the acquire the income to pay for the teachers sometimes is a challenge, because you have a lot of children, they're coming from families that cannot afford school fees.
Right. And so, and just really quick, so you were talking about elementary age children.
Yes.
And so in your experience in their education, what does that look like relative to what's going on in our schools here? You know what I mean? Because one thing when we talk about resources,
Yeah.
but when we talk about a commitment to education,
Oh.
I think that's the different thing. You know, we have a lot of resources here, but it just doesn't seem like there's a real commitment to educating people.
Yeah, it's really different. So I'm also attached to Guinea, so we're partnering with Guinea as well. So when you go into some of the schools, they don't have textbooks a lot of times.
Right.
So they acquire used books and find out what they can to help educate the children. And a lot of the teachers, some of the teachers are volunteering their time and hoping that they can get paid. You know, so it is a totally different dynamic. In their public school, you're talking about one teacher to over 50 students a lot of times. And so a lot of the students that may need one-on-one attention, they're not going to get it.
Yes.
So that's why sometimes these private schools are starting, because one, the public school is too far away to walk there, and then you're talking about water scarcity and clean water. So all of these things are interwoven.
Okay.
Because imagine taking your child to school and they cannot drink any water. You know,
Yes.
it's going to impact how they learn.
Right.
And so that's something that we do have some children that needs food and things like that, but we have government programs in place
Yes.
that is helping to meet those needs. A lot of these young people, they have to get up super early in the morning, go fetch water, bring the water back, then prepare to go to school. So the schools usually provide food, water, and all of those basic necessities so they can thrive.
Right. And so I think that it's just so important that, like you said, we understand a lot of the things that we take for granted
Yes.
and complain about, you know, folks in other places around the world with, you know, kill for,
Yeah,
the resources that
you
we
don't
have.
see a back to school drive. You know what I'm saying? You don't
Yes.
see a back to school program where they can just get some crayons.
Right.
And pencil and paper.
Yes, and so I think, like you said, it's important to maintain some perspective.
Yes.
And like you said, for our kids to understand that the resources that they have access to.
Yes.
And so, so starting with the schools, obviously when we start talking about resources and clean water and things of that nature. So what are some of the things that you need, as you travel over there? Because I know you guys, you take a bunch of resources and things of that nature. So talk to us about some of the things that you need, to keep this mission going.
I tell people, if they can donate monthly, even if it's just $5 a month, $20 a month, that goes a long way. They can actually support a student and pay for their tuition and school fees and their uniforms all at the same time.
Right.
So $25 a month. When I say giving, because sometimes we can get the items there a lot cheaper than we can get it here. And then to carry the things, it can get quite heavy.
Right, yeah, absolutely. Yes.
And
Been
now-
there.
Yeah, but I tell you, and the airports now, they're charging. So the whole
Yeah.
system has shifted and changed to where you can talk to a human and they can, they may allow a bag or two. Now you're talking to a computer system and that allowance may not be there. So you're going to pay an extra $200, $250 for extra bags.
Right. Yes, yeah, and so like I said, I think it's important to, break things down as much as possible for folks that want to contribute in some sort of a way. And, so often these problems seem so distant. And we're all dealing with our own issues as well.
Yes.
And so it's like, what little I have, I want to hold on to. But I do think it's important that we share this information with our community and understand the connection to our people wherever we are at in the world. And so I want to make sure we give this out. It's ZambiaInternationalMission.org.
Yes, ZambiaInternationalMission.org. I tell people, if you can give up fast food just for 2 weeks out of a month, or just like 2 days, so like 1 week, just skip a day. The next week, just skip 1 day. That's about $25 right there that they can contribute to someone who does not have at all. We're talking about brilliant young people. And if we can educate that generation, you got to think about your future.
Right.
Who's going to run the world?
Exactly. Exactly.
And I prefer it in the hands of someone who supported, because that's one of the things we should be doing, caring for orphans.
Yes.
Yeah. And for caring for those children who are in need, because we don't want them to grow up bitter.
Right.
We don't want them to grow up hard-hearted because they did not have. And they're a joyous group of young people. But the challenges and the hard lifestyle can make it rough and make them in a desperate situation to where they have to go get things in a different type of way, because things are changing.
Okay.
Yeah.
So talk to us about, what is a sustainability model for income generation? Break that down for us. What does that look like?
So we started to look in the area, what can be what contributions can be made, and what giftings that they already have. So he was already a businessman. That's Mr. Godway. He was already a businessman, business-minded, and he was already trustworthy. And so one of the things I said, okay, so what can we do in this area? He was like, we can do a goat farm. I was like, okay, well, let's do this goat farm. He started with 1 goat in his yard, and he just had a dream. And so I was like, okay, well, how much is it going to cost to acquire goats? He said $50 per goat. Because they have to get them from South Africa.
Okay.
And they have to be shipped there. Then they have to create the farm. So he was able to get land. And the doors were just opening. So I tell people, dream big and write it down.
Right.
So he acquired the property, acquired the land. We started buying goats. And people started contributing $50. We had one church that gave us $1,000. We had individuals who gave us $50. Some gave $100 because they wanted to name their goat.
Right.
And so with that project, we were able to. We made our goal of acquiring 100 goats. So we were so excited.
Wow. Okay.
Yes. So that 1 goat can feed a large family. In fact, it can feed up to about 25 people. And so, understanding that he was a pastor too,
Right.
and a lot of people came to him, so he was able to assist other families. So he's a very great conduit, for resources. So then with the school, when they do get income, they're able to pay their teachers. So you're talking about acquiring jobs.
Right.
And creating jobs there. There was another area that they were able to do a banana farm.
Mm.
So they created a banana farm that was huge. Another group, they were able to have a piggery.
Mm.
And when I tell you they started making money hand over foot, so just small things in their gardening, so they're able to feed their families, able to make money. One young lady, she was a widow, and she gave up all her money because her husband got sick, and they didn't have help. They didn't have a healthcare system like we have.
Right.
As a result of that, she said she just needed $300. Now I was able to watch this woman in operation because we do little testings. We have empowerment sessions and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And she was able to move around. We was doing a test to see if you had sales skills.
Mm-hmm.
And when I tell you, she worked the room in a bracelet. It was just a little wire bracelet for anti-mosquito repellent type thing.
Right.
And she sold it for $5.
Yeah. Just a hustler.
Yeah, and in less than 60 seconds.
Right.
I was like, we're going to invest in. We gave her $300. She was able to get her business back going, and she's doing very well.
That is so awesome.
Yes.
And we are now about 31 minutes past the hour of 5 o'clock. So if you are just tuning in, you're listening to 90.1 FM KKFI, Kansas City Community Radio. And our guest on Changing Narratives, Dr. LaTonya Stephens, talking about the sustainability models that are being created.
I had just wanted to speak to something just about the type of donations that can go a long way. Because there's like a concept that you just have to do, we have to cure AIDS, world AIDS,
Right.
cure world hunger. Well, no, a micro loan.
Yeah.
Because a $1,000 seed for somebody that's trying to start a business could go a very long way, and I've seen how they operate, and that's something that could be recouped in a relatively short period of time, or if the person was so generous just to grant a $1,000 microloan. Those types of numbers, $500, $700, $1,000, or because again, you spoke about the piggery, and I helped some folks start a piggery, and it was just a $2,000 seed to get them going.
Yeah.
And so again, it's not always some Herculean lift that it takes to positively affect change, and I think that's what people really need to know.
Right.
But that was $300 just for her business, you know.
So from the time that we're talking about, hey, he had a dream and he only had the one goat, to being able to purchase the 100 goats.
Yes.
What sort of a time frame are we talking about here that you all have been able to, make such inroads?
It was a year.
Wow.
Yes, it was a year. Because once individuals started seeing what we were doing, so we started off, it was a crowd campaign on Facebook. And as a result, just showing pictures and letting people know where their money is going, that was really huge too. People wanted to see that you're really doing something with their dollars.
Right.
And we're really to the penny with with how we're functioning. And it is a nonprofit organization. We're on GuideStar, we're registered. So when people give, it was going straight to the continent. And we showed pictures, and once it got there,
Right.
they purchased.
Yes.
And so over time, it started off with just the 20 goats. Next thing you know, we told them, we have 32 goats now.
Right.
Next thing you know we have 50 goats now. Until we got that 100. And within a year, we had 100 goats.
Right. And so, like you said, I think it's so important to give folks some perspective. And so for you, when you talk about the value of the dollar, somewhere like that, kind of put that into perspective. We talking about, a dollar here is worth, $100 there. What does that look like?
So right now, because it's continuously changing with the economy, about a year and a half ago, it was $1 to about 11 of Zambian kwacha. Now it's $1 to about 26 Zambian kwacha.
Okay.
So it just depends, and the economy is shifting. Now, well, that's a whole other story. There's so many things that's going on right now. And so it's expensive right now there. So the stretch of the dollar is not like it used to be. And it's becoming increasingly challenging because now they just built a casino in Zambia, which is unheard of.
Wow.
In Africa.
That's scary.
Yeah.
That is really scary.
Yeah.
And so, you know, a lot of folks, the perception that they have of the continent is shaped by, you know, Hollywood, and
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
they think it's everywhere is dangerous. You know, yeah, exactly. So once again, we want to educate our audience, and not having them being fearful of their own people. So talk to us. Let's you know, demystify some of that for our audience when we're talking about, like I said, being on the continent.
Zambia is a beautiful country. It is a beautiful country, full of resources. You know, they have a copper belt. So a lot of copper do come from Zambia, the northern part of Zambia. And the people are friendly, and the young people are very lively, and it's a pretty peaceful nation. Of course, as you know, international individuals come to the continent, they are bringing their culture.
And that's what I was going to ask, because you see a lot of Chinese investment
Yes,
in the
it's a lot of
continent.
that.
And so do you see that where you're at?
Yes, they have a hotel. They have a whole community, you know, in spots and different places, because they do have a port that's on the continent too. So, and it's, if you've been to China, so China, when you look at China and some of the areas, it kind of reminds you of Africa.
Yes.
So it makes it easier to live on the continents because it's very similar to their own. And so their country, and going to different countries in Africa, it doesn't feel foreign.
Okay.
So it makes it easy. And then they can go in there and make trays, and, you know, the Chinese are very harmonious people. So it makes it easy. They're very skillful.
Right.
You know, and I loved when I went to China and visited. So I could see how they are really good as business people.
Right.
I'll say it like that. They're really good business people.
Right. Well, like you said, I mean, you see they are everywhere and having a huge influence.
Yes.
But I had not heard that a casino.
There is a casino in Zambia.
Oh, yeah.
It was wild.
The same thing, just when I was in Uganda, sports betting
Yeah.
is huge, you know, particularly with football being the international sport it is. And so, again, and that's when you look at just the types of influence that the West has that could be negative.
Social media. Because now, where people did not have phones, now
It
everybody
changes
have
the
a
game.
phone. Yes, it does.
Yeah, I mean, again, when I was on the major university campus in Uganda, Makerere, and to see Jay-Z and Beyonce and Tidal and Nicki Minaj being advertised on the banners on the main strip of the
That's real.
campus.
Right.
And so that's when you know, yeah, it's definitely a different game. You know, again, as far as economies, one of the things that I saw was that food was particularly a lot cheaper.
Yeah.
But products that we consume in the West were on par.
Yeah.
with the cost. You're not gonna get any type of deal on any electronics.
Yeah.
Oh, most definitely.
So you know,
Electronics and Fritos and
Right.
Frito-Lay.
Yeah, but again, too, I'm not sure about Zimbabwe, but with any country, and you go to the capital city, then you're not gonna be lacking for any amenities that you find in the West.
True, that's very true. Because it's only in your smaller villages where you may not have a running toilet.
Yeah.
But the major cities, typically, because they're going to be attached to the government,
Right.
they're going to have everything they need. But yeah, the West is infiltrating just different countries, pure because of social media. They're more exposed. Tanzania, unfortunately, I had a call from a young lady. She was just frazzled because they had a suicide among young people.
And
It was unheard of for them. And so it's becoming increasingly challenging. Social media is infiltrating everywhere, and so they're acquiring information that is not healthy for them too.
Yeah, because like you said, we're typically not exporting the
The
best.
best of us.
Yeah.
And again, too, when in every instance that I went to Africa, I was the first African American that they met. Now they meet people from other countries all the time, but
Right.
they never had met an
see
African
us.
American. I was
Yeah.
just curious if that was your experience.
In Zambia, not as much, but I have been to. So when I go to the villages, it's a new experience, and I'm grateful that I was trained very well. My friend, she's deceased, and she passed away early in life, but she trained me well. I would say it like that. I learned how to blend in. So when I went, I wanted to make sure I represented us well, and make sure I represented my mama well.
Right. Okay.
And let them know that I didn't lose my manners. So I would dress in the attire. I would make sure I do my bow or my curtsy to make sure I'm respecting the elders. And I'm sitting at their feet. I kneel. And sometimes, they have the ways they greet each other. I make sure I'm observing and I fall right in line.
Yes.
And so they say, "Oh, you're so welcome. Your friends are welcome." So it makes it nice and easy because a lot of them have not seen African Americans there.
Wow. Well, we are up against our second break, so if you're just tuning in, you're listening to 90.1 FM KKFI, Kansas City Community Radio. This is Changing Narratives with Brother Jay, and we'll be back after this quick break.
KKFI values the opinions of our community, and we want you to be heard. Let us know what you think about our programs by going online to the KKFI Listener Survey.
Ivory Coast,
Go to KKFI.org.
Burkina Faso.
Nice.
Yeah,
Awesome.
yeah.
I've been to Uganda. I haven't been to Burkina Faso.
Thanks for tuning in to KKFI.
On that time.
Well,
Okay, this is a shorter one.
Okay.
I'm actually going to transition to this song.
If you haven't already, give it a shot. KKFI.
Do I need to?
No, it's Miles Davis.
Okay.
So on the west, goes up into Nigeria, Cameroon, Guinea. I gotta look at the map. But for that area, but for everything else, I've been to like the 12 other countries, on the continent. And I'm addicted. I'm addicted. When I go there and hit the country, it's like any stress that I had, it melts away. Like, it's just gone.
Yeah.
And it's amazing.
And
It's
this
like
is
healing.
typically when I would want to be there.
Yeah.
Like, because the last time I went, I left at the beginning of December. It was like, man, I should have left at the beginning of January.
Right. The weather, man.
Start, again, being on the equator where a nice 12 hours of sunlight, 12 hours, regardless of the time of year.
Yes.
It's just those small things that I appreciate.
The food on the West Africa is so good. I'm headed to Ghana next month. To Ghana, and then I'll be traveling down to Zambia. And I'm so ready because I haven't been to Ghana in a few years. So
How long will you be there?
2 weeks.
Okay.
So I mean just 2 weeks, but I'm gonna make the most of those weeks.
Yeah, well, again, I tell anybody that if it's your first time, you should probably go 2 or 3 weeks because it takes a week to get over the culture shock, and then a week to get the rhythm, and then a week to be like, okay,
Yeah.
I'm here. That's what I suggest to
when I
people.
go. But you're right.
I mean, if you're not like again, if you had
We're
a
vets,
different
so we can-
mindset.
Yeah.
Going out the gate versus somebody that is like, just waking them up out they sleep.
Yeah, I do take teams sometimes. I took a group in 2023, and I'm gonna take another one in 2026.
Okay. So when we come back, I'm gonna talk about your books. Talk about some of the other work that you're
Benjamin
doing.
had a question.
And then when we, I'm sorry.
He had a question.
Well, when are you taking me then?
Maybe 2026 as well.
I did the 2025.
We'll work on that.
So the first
I
book
like
is The
that
Salt of
view,
My Tears
Yep.
and Don't Settle for Wooden Nickels.
Yes.
Okay. We'll kind of have a little bit of conversation about that. And then we'll have, because we only have about 5-6 minutes left of conversation. And then we'll just bring it back to how folks can make contributions.
Thank you.
And if you want to talk about what you have coming up in March.
Okay.
Should have been back. You are listening to 90.1 FM KKFI, Kansas City Community Radio. This is Changing Narratives with Brother Jay and our guest, Dr. LaTonya Stephens. And that was a track by Miles Davis, Generique. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it correctly, but it was Spanish, but one of my favorites, Miles Davis cuts. And so before we went to break, a lot of our conversation has been around the work that you're doing in Africa. And, you wear many hats. Mom, a wife, author. So talk to us. I know I want to cram some information in here in a short amount of time. So you have 2 books that you've written. The first book, The Salt of My Tears, which was nominated for the Thorpe Men Literary Excellence Award.
Yes.
And then you have a second book, Don't Settle for Wooden Nickels.
Yeah.
So, a couple of questions. How do you find the time to do all of this? And then talk to us about that inspiration, to write those books.
The Salt of My Tears came in a season, actually during COVID, and there was a lot of loss during that time, and I had lost a lot of people in life. And actually, Clubhouse had just taken off. It was popular, and I met a young lady, and it was a house of creativity that I was participating in. She had a writing class and asked, come join us, just check it out. I checked it out, and she asked, and I always did poetry, but she asked me to write down some words. I did that, to create a sentence, and everybody was like, "Ooh, have you ever thought about writing a book?" And I was like, no, but I started writing. So needless to say, I started taking the writing classes and just started writing. And so within a few months, I had a book. And so she would tell me, she said, write some more, go deeper, write some more, go deeper. So it ended up being a lot of stories, because I enjoy storytelling.
Right.
So I took stories and put it in poetry form. And so the salt of my tears, how you cry, that real good cry, you have the residue of salt on your cheeks.
Yes.
And so it reminded me of the lessons learned in life. So that's why it's entitled The Salt of My Tears.
Wow.
So it's the residue from my life.
Yeah, that is awesome. That is awesome. So now, you wrote these 2 books after having your child. So,
Yes.
so
He was my dissertation baby.
okay. and I want to kind of, talk about that too, because once again, you are doing so much and pack so much into your day. And then you are, advising other folks on their relationships. How do you find the time, to recharge your batteries and do what you need to do to be your best self for everyone else?
I turn my phone off and I go to sleep at night.
Okay. So is that an 8 hours of hard interrupted sleep?
Between 7 and 8 hours of sleep,
Mm-hmm.
I'm shutting down.
Right.
And so I turn the phone off and I make sure there's just no interruptions during that time. I value my sleep at night, so I try to keep my circadian rhythm on track.
Right. And I'm laughing, but I do think it's a very important point to make for folks to understand. You do have to find that time for yourself.
Yes.
In the midst of whatever storm that you're in, and how important that is. And for someone like yourself that, like I said, is operating in so many arenas, for a lot of young women, I'm sure looking, it's like, I could never do all of that. Yes, she must be some sort of a superwoman. But we all have the same 24 hours in the day. So, like I said, kind of demystify that for us, if you will.
So you do a little bit at a time. You find out, so this season, it could be a die-hard season for missions. And then there's the season, especially during the summertime, because right now I don't feel the writing bug.
Okay.
And so maybe next month it may hit, and while it's hot, because it flows really quickly and easy. For me, I have not had the writer's block.
Right.
And so it just flows because it's dealing with experience. Most of what I've written so far is dealing through experience. So even with the Don't Settle for Wooden Nickels, there's an experience behind it, so I can tell the story.
Right.
So I already had an outline based off of what I've already done before. And so outline in the book, start telling the story, and then you partner with people who's going to push you for more. And so when you push you for more and you be consistent, it was one Wednesday, every week, at the same time for about an hour and a half, I'm crashing it out. So that's how my schedule was when it came to writing.
Okay, yeah. Like I said, I just think, whenever I see a high functioning, folks juggling a bunch of different things. I mean, I'm married with 2 kids, and I know how difficult it is to manage time, and that's just working a 40-hour work week. I cannot imagine, like I said, traveling internationally, writing books.
And you write on the plane.
Oh, and so you
Yeah.
have lots of time to do that
Exactly,
on the plane.
yes.
And also maintaining a marriage.
Oh, yes. That's a whole other,
That's a whole show. We'll have to come in and have a couples show.
oh, that would be hot.
Yes, absolutely,
That's my
absolutely.
attitude,
Because
yes.
I'm not one to give advice because I believe that every relationship has its own DNA.
Yes.
But I do think that there are certain things that you learn along the way if you've been with someone. And
Yes.
my wife and I have been together for 27, 28 years, been married for
Yeah.
23. And so there are things that we've learned on our journey that I think could be useful to other couples. And so,
Yes.
we definitely
That'd be
we definitely have to sit down and have that conversation. And so before we get out of here, I want to make sure we are directing folks to ZambiaInternationalMission.org to learn more about how they can make contributions, learn more about the work that is being done, the very, very important work. And I cannot stress that enough. Anytime we have the opportunity to help folks get resources, to help folks get education, basic necessities, talk to us about, like you said, water.
Yes.
Just,
oh my goodness.
That sort of thing.
I'm so grateful. Last year we were able to dig 2 boreholes, which that means is getting clean water in 2 different villages and communities.
Mm-hmm.
It was crucial because they had a drought for over a year. And it was rough because they could not grow their crops. So people were going hungry. The water was scarce. They were lining up with buckets and hoping to get some clean water.
Right.
And I was able to experience firsthand what it was like to not have water that was appropriate for your system.
Yes.
I had a kid switch a bottle with me by mistake,
Mm-hmm.
and I drank the water.
Oh my goodness.
Yes, the
It's-
dehydration was very real.
Mm.
So I'm just trying to be kind.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I got it.
Yeah.
I had to get connected to an IV the whole night, and I felt incredibly weakened. If I did not have services, I could see how people died.
Yeah, and like you said, for that to be happening in 2025,
That hurts.
in this world,
Yes.
with all the technology available,
ridiculous.
and we're talking about people dying from things that we were dying of during the Civil War.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, once again, any amount that you can contribute
Yes.
is useful, and any additional resources, like you said, you don't want to have to be traveling with a bunch but we are appreciative of what people can contribute. And so, the hour always goes by so fast, and we try to cover as much as we can, and like I said, introduce you to our audience, but you have an open invitation here, and we definitely want to make sure that we are having more conversations. And oh my God, we are now about 7 minutes before the hour of 6 o'clock. So please stay tuned at the top of the hour for Roots Wise Reggae as well. Do not want to forget that. But before we get up out of here, like I said, we would need much more than an hour to try to cover everything that you are doing. But is there anyone or anything that you want to get across before we get up out of here today?
I would say, please find a charity that you love and that you can partner with. For our organization, Zambia International Mission, we cover the areas of education, clean water, even church planting for those who want to support churches and building projects and income-generating activities if you're a business person. There is a spot for you. So if you enjoy sponsoring children, we have students that need sponsorship. We have families, we have teachers that need sponsorship, schools that need sponsorship. We can use your support and your help. Your donation of even $20. If it's $20 a month, you can send a student for school for an entire year. $250 will cover the entire year, actually. So just $20, that's just giving up a little Starbucks.
Right.
And a sandwich at Burger King.
Exactly, because that's about $20 now.
Yes.
Absolutely. And so, Brother Brown, before we get up out of here, anything you want to add to the conversation?
Just don't let the apprehensions keep you from sharing and getting to know people on the other side of the world. Just think about how often in this country we meet people from other parts of the world.
Yes.
And so take that opportunity again, and it's not nearly as expensive and nearly as many hurdles as you think to really look into how people are living their lives in a different part of this world.
Yeah, and I said, if anybody want to travel, we're going to take a group in 2026. And so they can email me at Zambia2jurisdiction@gmail.com, and that's Zambia 2 jurisdiction @gmail.com, or just follow us and we'll send the information out. Again, we're taking a group in 2026, so come on, win it.
Yes, I'm telling you, that is my dream. You know, I've been thinking about this for years, and I've had some health issues before that I'm still working through, but trying to get my body right to be able to make that kind of a trip. And so that is a dream of mine. And so I want to thank you, Dr. Stephens, for coming on the program.
Thank you for having me.
Want to thank your church family, your husband for sharing you with us today. I know you have tons going on and are a very, very busy person. And I just appreciate your presence and the work that you do. You know, coming to church, you know, you exude and your spirit, I mean, it just shines through. And I want to thank you on behalf of my family for all of the work that you are doing. And so once again, I want to encourage everyone to stay tuned at the top of the hour for Roots Wise Reggae. We're going to sign off here, Brother Brown and myself, and we'll be back next week with another program.